Hey everyone, welcome back to the How to Find Your Moxie podcast. I'm your host, Lizz Carter Clark, author of the book How to Find Your Moxie and founder of the nonprofit College Moxie, whose mission is to empower every woman to know her worth. Our hope today is that you'll gain some nuggets of wisdom to help you move closer to a life lived with confidence, joy, and love so that we can build stronger, more supportive communities wherever we find ourselves. I'm so excited that we are back today and with a wonderful special guest for a few of our episodes moving forward, Mackenzie.
Hi, Liz.
How are you?
Good. I'm great. I'm so excited to do this with you.
I'm so excited that you're here. Awesome. Thank you for saying yes.
Of course. I couldn't say no.
Mackenzie is one of our amazing interns at College Moxie. She's done really great work this past semester. We are excited that she is going to stay on with us a little longer. And I'm really excited just to hear the perspective that you bring to a lot of things, because all of this is stuff that I've written about in my book and things that I talk about on college campuses. But to have the balance of your experience as a current collegian, I think is so valuable to our audience.
Yeah, I think it is as well. I'm a senior at the University of Arizona. So I've been there for 4 years, and I feel like Arizona is a normal college campus, I would say, as it's a pretty big university. So I think I have good insight within what you talk about and just empowering females throughout their time in life, and especially in college.
I love it. Okay, so what is one thing that you wish you'd known sooner going to college?
That there will be a lot of ups and downs. It'll be hard, but at the same time, it always gets better. Coming into college, I think a lot of people, especially freshmen, go through this phase where they love it, and then they're like, oh, I really miss home. And then they get homesick and want to go home, and I just think that gets better throughout the time that you're in college, and it's always roller coasters, but at the end of the day, it's such a learning experience, and it allows a lot of growth.
I love that. And cheers to you deciding to grow instead of implode.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes that's the option at that crossroads.
It is. Definitely.
Good for you.
Definitely. Yeah.
Which actually kind of takes us into our topic of today, childhood. How does childhood impact our confidence and our moxie?
It's a big impact, Our childhoods shape who we are as people. It doesn't define us necessarily, but it shapes us. And we all are who we are because of our experiences that we've had throughout our lives.
Yeah.
You want to dive into it?
Yeah, let's dive in. You bring me to like a good starting point where our producer, Maddie, another college student, we're going to put you on camera at some point so everyone can like see who you are. Maddie is the best. But she brought up a really great point when we were talking the other day about, nature and nurture work together to create a lot of who we are. And, it's interesting in our childhoods, like what impacts our worldview and what experiences we each have that are all different from anyone else's that we decide to carry forward. Because like we'll have some experiences that just kind of become part of our past, and we'll have other ones that we kind of connect to, and then they shape our worldview and how we view ourselves, how we view others, how we view life.
Absolutely.
And I love being able to unpack that, because I think some of the things that we adopt through those experiences empower us, but some of the things that we adopt and decide to cling to really limit us too, especially when it comes to negative experiences.
So for you growing up, how did that kind of shape you? And what kind of things did you find that you carried on throughout your life?
Good question. Well, okay, so for me, I grew up in a really supportive family. I was always kind of, in some ways, seen as very rebellious, but really it's just because I pushed against the norms. I realize now I've always had a really strong gut response to anything that felt inauthentic. And there were certain environments while growing up where I would encounter someone or a situation and I would really feel like it wasn't authentic. And rather than trusting that, I feel like I kind of became conditioned within like the environment to pretend and pretend that it wasn't there. And so that definitely became an influence. And like looking back, I realized like my parents were not people that would have ever told me you need to pretend, you know?
Yeah.
But it's media, it's society, it's groups of people that we interacted with. You know, I had a very interesting dynamic growing up between like my church community, my private school community, my country club community. Those were kind of like the three buckets. My dance community. Those four environments were very different demographics in a lot of ways. I kind of love that I grew up in a way where like at in some instances at my school or at our country club, I felt like we were poor, but like at church or at dance, I felt like we were the wealthiest people there. And it was like actually a really good balance for me, I think, because my parents always did a good job of teaching us that like whatever you have costs someone somewhere. And it doesn't mean that you need to like feel guilty for what you have, but there was always an insistence that you respect what you have, that you take care of it. And so I think a lot of these like dynamics kind of gave me a good perspective on like knowing that we were privileged, but also knowing there were people that had more than us. And it just was part of life. It wasn't a better than, less than. It was just a reality in a way.
Yeah.
And I think it really brought me to a place of like, there's a verse in the Bible that I love that says, to whom much is given, much is required. And I really connect with that. And I've always felt like, you know, if there's a way that I can help someone else and I'm privileged enough to be in a situation to do that, then that's something that I want to do.
Yeah.
Now, those are a lot of the worldviews that I have now looking back. But in the moment, I think there were a lot of dynamics where like I didn't necessarily see things for what they were. I just only had like my perspective of like what it was like as a kid to be in an environment that made it seem like maybe my feelings didn't really matter here.
I think like the things that happen to us in our childhood and the way that we react to them do have everlasting effects on us, and we take that throughout our lives. And I think when we experience things, maybe adverse experiences or positive experiences throughout our childhood, there's part of our brain that just kind of internalizes that, and that we react and our actions are based off those experiences. And I think every person's childhood experiences are obviously different, and everyone comes from different backgrounds and different things, and that shapes us throughout our lives. But finding like what those things are and how they are positively or negatively affect us, I think is important as we navigate growing older.
Totally agree. I mean, I feel like I grew up in a pretty supportive family and community. And so when my youngest brother was diagnosed with cancer, it turned my world upside down. I went from feeling a ton of support to feeling really alone. And my other brother and I technically had each other, but we also processed things, especially emotions, so differently that it was really hard for us to, I think, feel like we did have each other. I don't know, I won't speak for him, but we just dealt with things differently. And I think we were both like so in survival mode of, okay, we just have to like head down, do what we're supposed to do, you know, sacrifice what's needed, which basically was having our parents there, because my brother Scott, his doctors were in Kansas City and Nebraska, and we lived in Oklahoma. And so I kind of remember my parents being like, listen, Scott's got cancer. We've got to go see this specialist in Nebraska. We'll be back. And then in my mind, it's like they never came back. And so for the next 3 years, I mean, they were gone constantly. And when they were home, it was because he needed to recover so that he could go back for another treatment. And like, I was a kid that had a lot of allergies. So like if I had a sniffle or something, I would go stay at my grandparents' house. So I went from like this pretty cohesive, supportive bubble to kind of just feeling like I'm just hanging out there on my own, you know?
Alone. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that definitely impacted me to where, I mean, the whole reason that I wanted to start College Moxie is because when I went to college, I was so afraid that if people knew how much I was drowning, how much I was hurting and struggling, that they wouldn't want to be friends with me, because we all like sacrificed what we needed to get Scott the help he needed. But he ended up passing away right before I went to college. And nobody knew that I was a mess. Nobody knew I was hurting. And I realize now it's because I believed the lie that I wasn't capable of contributing positively to friendships if people knew how much I was struggling. I had such a fear of becoming a burden if people knew. And I think part of it in a way was like a fear of myself, because I didn't fully know how emotional I would be, how I would react or respond. Like if I opened those floodgates, you know?
Yeah. And I think there's so many people that just keep those type of things in, and then it just eats away at you. And you can't, it's hard to move forward in your life when you haven't been able to like process it and also have those people to like give you that support and open yourself up. And I think childhood, like traumas or anything that has happened, like a lot of people hold those so close to their heart. But at the end of the day, it's a lot of our being. It's a lot of who we are, you know? And being able to open that up and talk about it with others, with good relationships, is so important to like finding your moxie, you know? It is.
I totally agree. Yeah, I mean, the things that we experience as children really do shape our worldviews in a lot of ways. And they create these filters that then we run our decision making through, where we decide if someone is like a benefit to us or a threat to us. Whereas like as a small child, we might see someone that needs help and our instinct is, yes, I'll be helpful. But then later in life, we're like, wait a minute, if I help that person, does it somehow make me succeeding more challenging, you know? Or we think, is that person a threat to me, or can that person help me? Like, I don't think we're necessarily cognizant of these thoughts, but we start to figure out that like there's a part of life that becomes positioning in order to succeed and get ahead.
Yeah.
And I really think that comes from being taught, not necessarily by our parents. My parents certainly never taught me this, but society and media taught me that there's not room for all of us. And I really think that is like the biggest barrier to supportive, authentic community amongst women, especially in our teen years and our 20s. And even moving forward, if we don't have an aha moment of realizing we can all succeed, there is room for all of us. But that is a drastically different mindset than most of us believe from a very young age. So that can be a lot to unravel. And if we don't realize we're doing it, then we're definitely not going to stop.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, so when you went to college, did you, and talking about like your friends from home and stuff, and then when you made friends in college with everything that was going on with your life, like, did you find that difficult, or did you rely on your friends like from home in that situation when you were going through it all? Or
no, that was probably one of the hardest parts, because I'm going to date myself, but I mean, I went to school, we obviously didn't have social media, but when I went to college, like cell phones were barely a thing. And so all of my friends were off at school having their own college experience. It was rare that we connected on the phone, you know?
True.
And so, I mean, to be honest, Scott passed away, I went to college, and the first semester, I would pick up the phone to call my parents to see how Scott was doing, because I didn't really live in the house without him in the same way that my other brother did. My other brother, poor thing, he went from being a middle child to an only child. Yeah. Which I'm sure he has his own thoughts on that and his experience and how he unpacks that. But for me, it took me a long time to realize he wasn't there because I didn't have to live with the void in the same way. And what really shifted things for me is I decided when I went to college, I was like, I can fake it. I can totally fake this. I've been acting for a long time. Here we go, you know? And I probably, that was an Academy Award winning performance there my first few weeks of school, I think, just pretending. But I finally had a moment where I connected with some women. It was actually during my sorority recruitment experience that,
Really?
like, third round, I walked in and there were some women that I just really felt connected to. And they were like, hey, so good to see you again. How are you doing? And I was like, actually, I'm not okay.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, what? And I was like, I'm a hot mess.
That's to feel relieving, no?
This is what's going on.
Yeah.
It was, but it also risked a really awkward moment, especially now that I know that, like, behind the scenes things are timed and, like, you know, just knowing, like, you don't know how much time you have with people. But I just felt so safe in that moment that I just decided to be authentic. And, like, I don't know that I even thought through, like, what I was risking. It just felt like a survival instinct. Mm-hmm. And the way these women met me with love was so, so beautiful. I mean, they were like, we see you. We are so sorry. How can we support you? And I mean, that just, like, shattered that lie that I had believed, that I couldn't be enough if I wasn't perfect or if I didn't pretend to be perfect. Mm-hmm. And that, looking back, I think that impacted changing my worldview so much more than I realized in the moment. But it's really through that experience that I was like, we need more of this. The world needs more of this.
Yeah.
Because while I was struggling in college, my coping mechanism became leadership. Like, I wasn't a drinker.
It's a great coping
I wasn't
mechanism.
doing drugs.
Insane coping
yes,
mechanism.
But I controlled anything anyone would let me control. Like, I would make up things that needed someone to run them because it gave me a sense of control when my life felt so out of control. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I was asked to come back and mentor college women at a really young age, like a year and a half out of college. And it was really there that I started to realize, oh my gosh, if I'm just around, if I'm just simply present, people will share their stuff with me. And what I was learning was I hadn't been nearly as alone as I thought.
Yeah.
So many of us were struggling with, like, where do we belong? Mm-hmm. Who defines our worth? Do I believe the same things that my parents do? Like, I've pretty much understood the bubble that I grew up in through high school, but now I'm in a totally different setting. By the way, I was legally a child months ago, and now all of a sudden I can do anything I want, but my frontal lobe isn't fully developed, so I don't grasp all of the potential consequences in front of me for these choices that just look like a candy buffet. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, that is a lot to process. And I think because a lot of people learn by trial and error, sometimes I would watch really amazing students make choices that, like, you know, let's face it, we don't all have the same consequences from the same choices in life. Yeah. You and I can choose to do the same thing, and I can, like, leave without a scrape, and you might have detrimental impact, mm-hmm. or vice versa. Yeah. And so I was watching that happen, and then I was watching women get really wrapped up in, like, shame of certain choices. I think looking back, I did the same thing in a lot of ways, like, just felt a lot of shame over simply trying to, like, figure out what worked for me based on this new environment that I just found myself in.
Yeah.
And it's a lot to unpack, and it's really challenging, I think, for a lot of students to make room for some grace for ourselves, but also make room for personal responsibility. Mm-hmm. And that's a kind of a delicate balance there.
Yeah, and I think it's really hard, especially transitioning into college, to find that. And like you said, you're kind of just like, okay, you get to do whatever you want now and hopefully figure it out. Everything is just a building block in our lives, and I believe everything happens for a reason. And I think that there's always a positive that you can find from even negative events. Like, there's positive things that you've taken away from your experiences growing up. And I think that's how you should look at those experiences, with grace and positivity and happiness, you know? Mm-hmm. I just think that's important.
So is there a specific, like, aha moment that you've had around, like, how a certain aspect of your childhood has impacted you as far as, like, how you view the world and other people?
So I did gymnastics growing up, and it was pretty intense. I was practicing like 40 hours a week. I did it for like 12 years, and that was my whole childhood, pretty much my entire childhood. Monday through Friday, weekends, every day, all day. And I got to spend time with the same group of girls and my coaches and that stuff. And that taught me that, like, there's so many different types of people, and when you work with people so closely on a regular basis, you have to find grace for everyone else's ideas, and you also have to like find like grace in yourself and determination in yourself.
Is there any like specific aha moment where you can connect like that part of your life to how you now view the world or view yourself or others?
So gymnastics taught me that I'm capable. I am capable, physically, mentally capable of doing hard things. And like I can do it. And that's what it really taught me. And also it taught me that putting hard work into something, there'll be good outcomes. If you put time and effort into that, like you'll get positive results. You'll get what you want in a sense. But also from gymnastics, I learned that it doesn't have to be so serious. It really doesn't. I had some coaches that had like Russian and Bulgarian coaches, and I like very strict. And then I had some coaches that were amazing, fun, made us laugh all the time. And it's just nothing has to be as serious as we think it needs to be. And that's what I took away from that too. But also like we all can do hard things. And there's nothing really stopping us from that. And if anything is stopping us, it's your own self.
Ooh, I love that.
Thank you.
Look at that personal responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoy that you bring together both of those things because I think they're both so important. Like we have to take responsibility for ourselves, but we also have to recognize that we are humans and stumbling is normal.
We make mistakes.
Yeah. I think my favorite part of all of this is recognizing the power of being able to identify where our experiences have impacted us, especially in the ways where they've limited us.
Yeah.
But also knowing that it's never too late to hit reset. No. We can always say, you know what, I'm going to start thinking about things differently. I'm going to start being more open. I'm going to stop being cynical or making assumptions about other people or whatever it is that those filters have caused us to believe that don't give other people the benefit of the doubt, that cause us to assume that if one bad thing happened, then everyone else is like motivated in the same way towards hurting us or something.
Absolutely. I think those are so important, and it's just recognizing that.
Exactly. And then next week we are totally going to dive into comparison and how it works together when like my life's here and your life's here, but we're like seeing each other's lives and wait, what? And
what's
more
going
about
on there?
more about toxic assumptions that we make. This has been good though.
Yes.
Feels good.
Very nice talking to you.
You too.
I feel
so
like I
happy
learned a lot about you.
Aw, you too. I enjoy you.
I enjoy you too.
Thanks.
Liz is the best, guys.
So glad Mackenzie's with us. Thanks everybody for listening to today's episode and for being part of our community. We could not do this without you. Be sure to like and follow to stay up to date with all of the awesome things that College Moxie is doing. Have a great day and keep shining bright.